Balls are kind of ubiquitous in the real world. We've got so many different games that involve shooting, hitting, bouncing, stacking balls. The list of games that involve balls goes on and on. We as humans seem to be obsessed with these little round spheres. And part of the reason, I think, is that when we play with balls, we learn how to handle them. Our play with the games through trial and error, we progress. So balls are kind of a natural mechanic in games. Racing is another mechanic. This can be one or more players attempting to get from one place to another, an actual physical race against the clock, a race against each other. So here you can add timing, who has the best time in the race. And of course, the other player may be a human in a network game, another human player, or an autonomous character or AI. Racing doesn't have to be vehicles in a track. It can also be performing tasks, such as completing a level or solving a puzzle. Avoidance and collecting. Avoidance involves players deliberately not interacting with a specific object. Don't touch the poison sphere. Don't fall into the hole too deep to get out of. Whereas collecting is kind of the opposite of avoidance. The player must interact with the object, touch the power up, locate the hidden door to the next level, whatever. We should provide visual cues for items to be avoided and to be collected. With the little gems that we used for pickups, green and blue gems are attractive. Red gems might be associated with danger. Sharp, prickly objects are associated with things that can harm us. And apparently anything that's the color of gold is attractive to people. Gold coins are all over many, many games. Searching, the process of scanning an environment for specific objects. This is basic human attribute. Hunter and gatherer societies were basically searching and collecting societies. Finding the keys that unlock similar matching doors, finding clues that reveal who the villain is, locating power-ups or potions that restore health or award us points, searching. Rewards can be points. They can be access to new levels of the game. They can be virtual tools that are used in the game, food, clothing, money, health. They can be kudos, getting your name on the high score list for the glory of it. Votes from other players, friends that you obtain in the game. And as we reward and penalize our players, we don't do this just necessarily at the end of the game, but we want to do this throughout the game as a way of providing feedback. And the feedback can be both positive and negative as a way of influencing our players' behavior. And by doing this, we're actually teaching the player how the game is to be played and how to be played better so that they can progress. So this feedback, positive feedback is where you add something, and negative feedback is where you take something away. This is a common misconception. And these can be used to indicate success or failure. You tell your player whether they've succeeded or failed based on this feedback that we give them, either by adding something or taking something away. Think of adding points, taking away health. There's a psychological discipline called behavior management, which has the concept of operant conditioning. And this is a technique for teaching relevant behaviors to voluntary participants. And the voluntary is key here. Voluntary is people who want to be conditioned. And these people are open to being taught in ways that will make them succeed. and we as game players are voluntary participants. So in operant conditioning, there are kind of official definitions of various terms. Positive reinforcement is where positive behavior is followed by positive consequences. You touch the gemstone and your points or your health go up. You do something right and something is added. Negative reinforcement is where positive behavior is followed by the elimination of a negative consequence. This term is often poorly defined in jargon. Negative reinforcement is where you take away a negative consequence when they do what you want them to do. An example is a player taking cover and the enemy stops shooting at them. So the negative consequence of being shot at is removed when they do the positive behavior of taking cover. Positive punishment is when negative behavior, doing something wrong, is followed by the addition of negative consequences. So as a player is being shot, that's negative behavior, don't get shot. So their health goes down, perhaps their speed goes down, perhaps their ability to shoot back goes down. So they're handicapped in some way. A handicap is added, positive, to punish negative behavior. And then we have negative punishment, where negative behavior is followed by the removal of a positive consequence. For example, if your player gets killed too often, you might make them wait in limbo longer and longer before they can respawn. This way they learn that getting killed too often takes away access to the game world, makes them idle in limbo longer than they should. Extinction is where neither positive nor negative behavior results in any consequence. There's no feedback. So for example, if you stand there and shoot at a tree, nothing happens. There's no consequence. Well, of course, you might run out of ammo, and that would be bad. Confusion, which is not a technique of operant conditioning, because it works against the training of a player, occurs when feedback is provided when there's no action by the player. The player becomes confused as to the reason behind the reward or penalty. So you don't want your players to be confused. When using feedback, the effectiveness is affected by a number of factors. One is saturation. If you receive the same feedback over and over again, the same reward, the player becomes less motivated by it. If you receive too many gold stars, you start to think, who cares? Immediacy is also a factor in how effective feedback is. The time between the player's action and the feedback should occur rather quickly, happens when the action occurs. There's some that don't happen to the end of the game, but that's a different way. You also want to be consistent. The feedback needs to align with the player's beliefs about the environment. If you step on a landmine and it only kills you once in a while, that's less of a deterrent to stepping on landmines. And there's also the whole cost versus benefit. Players evaluate the effort they need to spend on an action based on the potential reward. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. Hard challenges should give you bigger rewards. And of course, individual players have different levels of risk aversion, and so they'll play differently. But in general, we want to give bigger rewards for riskier actions. So the idea here is that a game, in effect, plays the human brain by providing it with tasks for which it was designed. And an understanding of what makes these game mechanics compelling and how to manifest them in a game is critical to designing a playable game. Now, in your final games, you're supposed to provide me with documentation that includes instructions for how to play the game. I have to play all your games, and I need some instructions. In the best world, they're part of the opening scene of the game, but I still need a document that has the instructions for how to play. These will be in a document, a manual that's included in the game folder. And it's good if they're part of the opening scene sequence, at least telling you, you know, WASD, that kind of thing. Or it can be a help scene or a HUD triggered by some keystrokes. And in the manual, I would like an analysis of your game in terms of these game mechanics that I've talked about. So, you know, look at how you've designed your game and identify the different game mechanics. And I will include this as part of the grade. So this ends my little discussion on game mechanics. I hope this helps you, in the design of your final game here, which starts kind of soon. We start working on our final game once we finish the advanced projects. So thinking about these things as you begin to design your game, or thinking about things as you analyze the game that you're implementing, can make for a much more compelling game.